Hello.
Hello,
Hello. How are you?
I'm all right. Hello, everyone. I'm Alexandra
Hello,
Walsh,
everybody.
and this is
Yeah.
Emma Gregory.
Hello, everyone.
I'm the author of The Forgotten Palace, and Emma narrated the audiobook for me. And Emma and I have been friends since 1985. So
Gosh, is
it's
it
a
that
real,
long?
yes,
Crikey.
it was September 1985 we met
Yes,
at
yes,
Richmond
indeed.
College doing
We
A-level
did.
drama.
I look a bit sort of weird sci-fi spaced out. Sorry, everybody, because the light in here is a bit weird. So I could do that, the whole chat. And
No,
you can see my face.
I think it looks quite cool. So we are here today
Yes,
for Goldwood Books, and we are talking about everything audio, which is why
indeed.
we're both here. And we've been given some questions just to stop us rambling and reminiscing about all the things that we've done over the years. So our very first question, and I'll go first, and then because I know Em's going to play off this one for me, which is what do you both love about audiobooks? Now, I do love audiobooks. I listen to them when I'm driving because I find it's a lot less boring than just endlessly listening to the radio. And I do quite a lot of driving on my own. So it's good to have the other voice in the car with me. But also, I just love them because they take you to other worlds, and you can take your other world with you wherever you go. And I listen to them mowing the lawn a lot as well. So what about you, Em?
I'm the same. Very often I will get the audiobook and the book as well because I
Yeah,
think we discussed this the other day, didn't we, Al? We
I do
like
that as
switching
well.
between the two.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to read in my head, and then sometimes I like to hear what a narrator's doing with it, or indeed what the author themselves are doing with it. Recently, I listened to Bruce Springsteen, for example, narrating his life story, which is just wonderful to hear his tone and richness of voice coming into that. And I love listening to actors bring them alive. The same, I listen to them at night. I love audiobooks and podcasts and things at night, which sort of helps me get off to sleep. Not because it's not interesting, but because I just like being told a story at night. And like you, I listen to them in the car, yeah, if I'm on long journeys. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Oh, I am going to have to put them back on so I can see.
You can see.
I
Good.
can see
Okay.
exactly what I'm doing. Now, you're not just a voice narrator. You have been an actor for 30 years,
Over
and you
30
work
years. Yeah.
over 30 years, and
Mm.
you've done some incredible things. You toured extensively with the RSC, and I mean, I've been to see you, I don't know how many times, and particularly at the Orange Tree in Richmond, which was
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
favourite.
Yeah.
Um, but you've been working as a voice artist now for quite a while as well. And what do you
Mhm.
enjoy about that, which is different from acting on stage?
Um, well, like you say, I've been doing stage, screen, and audio for a long time. But what I particularly love about audio work is, um, I think it's extraordinary because it allows the listener to go anywhere in their imagination. And that's the most powerful tool for me to use as an actor because basically I can take you anywhere, anytime, place, dimension, planet, you name it. And all I need is me, you, a microphone, and some great words. That's all I need. I don't need lots of budget with, big sets and costumes. And that's not to diss the other professions that I'm involved in that people love. They all have their wonderful place. But the thing about audio is that it speaks directly to the listener's imagination. And there's nothing more powerful at all than that. For example, you know what it's like when you're reading a great book, like a great horror story or something like that, and you're sitting alone in bed at night and you're just there, you're reading and you think, oh no, I've really got to get up for work the next morning, and so you think, right, I better snuggle down, turn the lights off. So you do, but you can't settle because there's something about the world that you've just been in that's really freaked you out, and so you think, oh no, shudder off and just sort of sit back up again and turn the light back on because you freaked yourself out, and you've taken yourself to some sort of place. Um, that speaks to your soul, and maybe you have to go make a cup of tea, before you can settle down. So, that's what I love about audio because a good audiobook can do that as well. So for me, it's the most powerful of mediums because it's like you and I are the artists, and you've presented me with this palette of colors from which I then take and draw on this blank canvas of the listener's imagination. That's how I feel. It's like it's art, you know? So that's the most powerful thing for me, um, is what I do and what you do and where the listener then takes themselves, in their head. It allows them to be right there with all their experience of life,
Yeah.
making that picture bigger, you know? That's
Oh, no, I agree. That's why I love listening to audiobooks, because they take you to different places.
yeah,
And it's quite a different experience, because reading a novel, whether it's as a book or on Kindle, is quite
yeah,
an intimate experience. But then
yeah,
when you've got
yeah,
the audio, that takes it to
yeah.
another level as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I also love I totally agree. I also love language. Um, Being in the Royal Shakespeare Company, I was lucky enough to work with really amazing voice people, Cicely Berry, for example, and so doing Shakespeare with her and learning about rhythm and grammar and how Shakespeare used words, particularly even down to the tiniest detail of which is everything to me. You know, the relationship between the vowel and the consonant, and how a writer will choose a particular word for a sentence or a particular rhythm of a sentence is, I think, wonderful for a narrator. And that's the narrator's job, is to honor the writer's work, I feel, even down to that kind of minute detail for me, because like with Shakespeare, it does half the work for you if you understand the language that the writer is using. So I feel very fortunate to have worked with amazing people like Sis. And also, I suppose the other thing I love about doing voice work and audio work, be it radio plays or audio books, is or animation or anything in the audio world, is I love all the different parts you get to play, especially in audiobooks. I mean, it's a real ego boost for an actor, you know, just me and a million parts, you know, and and you know, and particularly in huge, wonderful sort of almost epic books like The Forgotten Palace, you know, with so many wonderful different characters to play. That's a fabulous challenge, or the extremes that I might be taken to doing sci-fi 1 minute, or you know, a murder mystery the next, or your wonderful historical books. So yeah, it's a lot to relish as an audiobook narrator. That's what I love about the audio world.
Oh, that's wonderful. Really, no, it is. I mean, when I write now, I do
Yeah,
often think about you while
yeah,
I'm writing it, and thinking, oh, this would be a good one for Em. She can do a good accent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's nice. That's
The,
nice.
the next question is mine. How does it feel to have a narrator bring your characters to life in audio? Has
Yeah,
anything surprised you about a narrator's take on a character?
yeah.
Well, when I first heard you reading my stories, I mean, it was a while ago now, and it was I actually came to the studios in Leicester, didn't I? Because
That's right.
we were
That's
staying in
right.
a hotel,
Yes,
and it was your birthday while we were there as
it
well.
was. It was.
Yeah, and for me, hearing you narrate my words actually brought a lump to my throat when I first heard it, because I've heard you speaking words of amazing writers, Shakespeare being one, Alan Ayckbourn, when you've written
Yes,
Barbara and Cambridge.
yes.
So to hear you reading my books it was quite surreal, actually. It
Yeah,
really
I'm
was.
sure.
It really brought a lump to my throat. But
Yeah.
what I love is the way that, I mean, obviously we talk about them quite extensively before you begin. But what I love is the way that you bring elements to them often that I don't notice. In The Forgotten Palace, you did such an amazing job with the two, because I have the dual timeline with
Mm,
Alice, who is our Victorian heroine, who is quite young. And at
mm,
the beginning, she really is a little bit of a pain in the neck, and she is quite silly, but she grows through the story. And
mm,
you didn't change her voice dramatically, but you changed her emphasis on a lot of words, and you changed
mm,
the way that she delivered things. And the difference to see her growing was quite incredible. And the
mm,
same with Eloise, who's the main character in the present day section. She begins and she's more or less in shock. She's in a state
mm.
of shock because of all the things that have happened to her.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
without giving anything away, the opening chapter is at a funeral. And so Eloise is, she almost doesn't really know what she's doing. She's being guided around by her best friend and her family. And her voice sort of represents that. You did such a brilliant job there that she can't let herself go, because if she lets herself go, then she'll fall apart completely. But as she heals, as she gets to Crete and she begins to heal and the story develops, then her voice softens. And I really noticed it, so that by the end you could still hear the original voice, but she'd almost become a different person through the development. And I thought that was incredible, the way you did that. It gave real depth to what I tried to represent, because I mean, Eloise's story particularly is quite brutal.
Yes.
So
thank you.
it was quite well. I told you, because we talked about this the other day. When I was listening to it, I was mowing the lawn, because we do have a very large lawn, and I got to the end, and even though I wrote it, I know what's going to happen, I know what's coming, I actually stopped and just stood there and churned a massive hole in the grass while I listened to the answer, and it made me cry. It really did properly make me cry. So that's incredible for me to hear that, to hear my words read like that with such emotion.
I thank you so much, and I agree. I had this similar, same sort of experience in when I was presented with your first book to do. There was this just immense sense of pride. I'm looking at the camera, not down at the screen. I never know where to look on these. But anyway, I'm so sorry, everybody, if my eyes are kind of darting all over the place. But there was this immense sense of honor and pride, and also a sense of, my gosh, I remember holding the book and just, feeling just so mesmerized and proud of you, because we'd sat together at Richmond upon Thames College doing A-levels in drama and English and all of that, and you always wanted to write. You were always, that was your path. Mine was acting. We knew what we wanted to do, and I think we were very lucky as young people to know that. To not feel that sort of sense of directionless. We knew exactly where we wanted to go, and we did it. And it was that I sort of thought, my gosh, we've done it. We're here, and like we were saying the other day, in an unusual situation now. I like you said, I think we don't know many other. I'm sure there are some out there, but other people, that combination of writer and narrator. So yeah, a wonderful sense of achievement. But thank you very much, and that's what I love about. That's why I think, it's not just sitting in front of a microphone, turning on a nice voice and telling a story. It's telling the story, but you've got to bring it alive. You've got to bring it up off the page for the listener, and also get that balance right, because it's not radio drama. It's not acting in the theatre. So it's got to be, you've got to have good mic technique. You don't want to be too loud and too brash, too big, too bold, because you've got to let the words do it, because it's a novel. It's not a script, But I do believe in a slight change, which I wanted to do with Eloise and Alice. As Eloise becomes more confident, Alice becomes more mature in their experience. There is just a slight change of pitch, a just very subtle change of attitude as well. And that's why I think actors are important for this sort of work, for voice work, because they know how to get inside stuff. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to live it and breathe it. But your work is so wonderful, because you're, good writers let the work is done for the actor, because a good writer, you're not worrying as an actor about a clunky sentence or a clunky line or something that you think doesn't quite, how am I going to bring that alive? With your work, I can just live it and breathe it, because you've done it. I love you, Al.
I love you too, Ellen. The other thing as well, while we're talking about the characters, and we didn't actually touch on this when we spoke the other day, but I was thinking about it afterwards, is I love the way you do the male characters as well, because there is a real difference between all the voices, and especially again because of the timeline and the different accents that come over the years. Because in the Victorian era, I loved how you did Alice's brother Hugo. He was exactly as I imagined him. He's quite wealthy. They're all quite well to do in Alice's family, but he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
No.
But he means terribly well all the time. And you really captured him, because he's not stupid, but he's just not very worldly. And I did love the way you captured him. But I also love the way you captured Claude and Josh, who are the two sort of main male characters in the present day section. Because although, again, they both had similar backgrounds, they sound very different. And not just because of the pitch, but in their attitudes. And you really got that across, that there is this sort of almost antagonism between them, even though they're friends. But I loved it. And in all my books, I love, you do the female characters brilliantly, but you do the male characters. And one of my favorites, I know we're going off slightly on a tangent, is the music makers.
Oh yeah,
One truly evil character called Osgood Barron, and that, I mean, it was brilliantly done, but it did make me roar with laughter, because he was just from the voice, you knew what this man was, and it was incredible. It really was. So thank you for that.
Oh no, thank you. It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure doing your work. I absolutely love it. Absolutely
Okay, we
love
have
it.
another question now.
Okay.
Could you take us through the steps you undertake to prepare for narrating a book? What do you do when you receive the manuscript, and what's your process?
First of all, when I get it, I just like to read it as a book, sort of get the feel of it, get inside it, what's it about, who's in it, where's it set. And as I'm going through enjoying the story or technical book, whatever it is, historical factual book, whatever, I'll note down if there are any particularly challenging bits or particular accents that might think, well, I've got to go away and research that. Normally you get given a book where it's pretty accepted that you'll be able to manage whatever's in it. So that's fine. But I'll also circle any particular words I want to research a bit more, because often, even though you might know a word, just to check its definition and its context is really important, because the author is giving you the flavor as the narrator or the character of that word, of what it means, and therefore that determines how you play that scene or that bit of narration, if you see what I mean. So I go through it, circling things, noting things down. I'll make a note of, literally write down all the male characters, all the female characters, literally every single character in it. And once I've finished reading it, I'll then go back over it and make notes, really detailed notes about each character. Sometimes authors give you, like often you give me, or the reader or the listener, a description of the voice, a description of the character, because you want us to know what they're about, because it's important for the story. Sometimes authors don't give you anything at all, but that character is just there in the story, and so you have to really get inside the story to know what the detail is of that character. And so, yeah, I'll make detailed notes. And also that's really important to make detailed notes as a narrator, because it might be the start of a series and the author might take another year or two to write the next installment. And you don't want to be suddenly, asked to do the next installment, and then you can't remember what voices you chose and did and details you worked on for the first installment. So it's important as a narrator to make as many detailed notes on a book as possible, even if it's just a standalone novel. And also, you've got to get to know in detail like that, because there's a great difference between reading a book in your head and reading it out loud. And so I note down any passages that I think are going to be difficult out loud, particularly if it's a technical book, like an instruction book or a self-help book or a cookbook or something like that. And so that when I come to perform it, I feel comfortable, because there's a real difference. Because books are meant to be read. They're not actually meant to be performed. And so there's a huge difference. A novelist is not a playwright, is not a screenwriter. They're doing a very different genre. And so for us as narrators, we have to honor that by not overselling, but understanding the writer's work and the writer's structure. Sorry, that's my cat. Anybody hear my cat scratching in the background?
I've got Cardi's dog down here.
So so I think I get to know the book as much as I can, making as many notes as I can, as I say, noting down any accents that need to be worked on. And I then like to go back over it, obviously read it again, but this time I'll mark it up in even more detail. And I like to work in color, and there's an app that I use which allows me to open the book. So then I will then treat the book as a script then. And I can open the book in this particular app, and down the side of the screen are lots of pens and pencils and highlighters and things like that that I can tap on and use. And I, as I say, like to work in color. So I'll start to get the feel of the characters. I'll start to think, where am I going to pitch them? Are they going to have a deep voice, a mid pitch range, high pitch? And as I say, sometimes the author has given you, they spoke in a deep voice, you know, that kind of instruction. And sometimes they haven't. So you get a flavor of the character and the kind of person they are. And then that helps me choose what kind of voice. And so it's very helpful to initial the character as they speak. And I like to choose a color so that as soon as my eye sees their initial, the color gives me the feeling of the character. So if it's a sort of bright, sparkly kind of character who's very sort of high pitched or full of energy, I might, for me, somebody else might choose something different, but I choose like a yellow or a pink, you know, so that I initial that character's initials in that color. And that's really useful too, because if you've got a scene that the writer's written where there's 10 characters all, you know, sitting around in a dinner party or something and all having an animated conversation, and you've got to get through that conversation without stumbling as much as you can. Um, you've got to know who these people are instantly so that you switch into that voice in that conversation. Because lots of writers, and you've done it in your book several times, you know, there's no narration in between. There's like one line of dialogue, another line of dialogue, another
Yeah.
line of dialogue, you know, and
Sorry
sometimes
about
obviously
that.
it's broken up. No, no, not at all. No, it's a wonderful challenge. It's a wonderful challenge for a narrator, or it should be. So I use anything that gets me instantly into the voice, and for me, colouring initials really does that. So I can literally just flit into the voice that's needed in a split second. So that's the way I prepare, and I think all of those skills are. It's a real skill being a narrator, you know. I think it's
Oh,
not
it
to be
is.
taken for granted, you know. There's a lot of work to be done, and also that we're not robots, you know. It's okay to stumble.
Mm.
So you know, advice for people out there would be, if you're in a recording studio, as long as you've done your prep work and you know what the author's talking about and you've really got it inside you, um, you're not a robot. It's okay to stumble on a microphone. You go back, you do it again. Because some passages, no matter how much you practice them, because as I say, it's not a script, it's a
Mhm.
book. Um, to make it flow, it can be tricky sometimes, and then other bits just flow beautifully. But
Well,
that's our job. Yeah,
we had that in one, didn't we? And I think this covers another question, but it sort of fits in here.
yeah,
In my first book, the one that I was in the studio with you when you were recording it, there
yeah.
is actually a little diagram partway through that, which is a
That's right.
demonstration of a code breaking sort of challenge. Well, not a challenge, they're breaking codes, and it's how
Mm,
they did it. And it's a little
mhm,
chart.
mm,
And we talked about it quite extensively beforehand because it's like, how do we illustrate that? How do we actually say it? And I actually rewrote some of it for
mhm,
the audio,
mm,
didn't I?
that's
When we
right.
sit there and we had to put a little note in, so you know, saying rewritten by the author on the day of recording, so
Yes,
that
that's
people
right.
knew that you hadn't changed it. But
Yes, yeah.
that's the other thing that I always think with audiobooks, that certainly as a writer you don't always think. You think, oh, I'll just put this in
No,
here. Just
uh,
and you saying about the different people speaking with no indication as to who is who because the conversation's gone on. I know you've rung me a couple of times and gone, who is it here? And I've had to go back through and I've gone, I think it's so and so. Yeah, give
yeah,
them that
yeah,
line. They
yeah,
haven't said
yeah.
anything for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because writers are writing. They shouldn't
yeah.
be thinking about the audiobook necessarily, unless they want to, of course. But then that becomes a sort of, for me, I think, slightly different ball game. So
Mm,
they need to write the book they want to write, and it's up to the narrator when they're given the book by the publisher or the writer to ask the questions so that they make sure they're very comfortable in narrating it. They know exactly what the author wants. Don't ever wing it. Don't ever assume. And anyway, you know, the publishing company or the production company will pick up things that aren't clear anyway. But you know, from the narrator.
mm,
No, it's important and it's really helpful. Like we've had great long chats about. It's really helpful to speak to the author because it does. You know, you are very comfortable with your books being audio books, but some writers are like, oh gosh, you know, I'd never thought of it being
yeah.
listened to like that, you know. And so some authors are bit frightened of it. Some are really happy with it. Some don't know. But it's always good to have a chat through, yeah, and any difficult bits because um, 'cause it might be useful. I mean, like how we talked about that diagram and stuff, and how
Yeah.
you then go away and rewrite that bit is really useful because it adds to the audiobook for the listener's experience or understanding of the story. Yeah.
Okay, right. The next question is mine. It says, do
Yeah.
you listen to your books on audio? If yes, do you still hear your words, or do you treat it like someone else's work? I do listen to my books. I've listened to all my books. And obviously, as we've already said, I was in the studio for the recording of the first two, which was fantastic. It was really hard at first, I have to say,
I bet.
because it was weird hearing my words being read and being read by you. But then the more I've listened, like I said, I love audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks
Mm.
probably every day.
Mm.
And so I do often get to that point where I cut off and I'm just listening to it as a book, even though I know what's coming. Occasionally, you very kindly said there's never any clunky lines in my books. Occasionally, when I'm listening to it, I do think, that was, if I could go back and edit that line, I would. That didn't work too well. So that generally brings me out of it. But no, I find it, as a writer, really interesting to listen. And I think it's helped me to sort of strengthen in certain areas, especially dialogue, listening to it out loud, because you do see a different dimension of it. And things that you think worked really well often don't work as well on an audiobook as they do on a page. So I mean, occasionally, like I said, I hear a line where I wince. Occasionally, I hear a line where I go, "Wow, did I write that?"
Yes.
Terribly grown up, doesn't
Yes.
it?
No, that's one I've loved bits like that where I've and particularly in the wind chime, I mean, just heavenly novel. There were bits where I had the same experience go, "My gosh, Al's written this. This is amazing." Or, or like we discussed the other day, bits where I've gone, "Uh-oh, has Al gone through this and I haven't known about this?" And I've rung you up and gone, do you wanna tell me something?" You know? And you've gone, "No, it's all right. It's just something I saw from a magazine or, something I've spoken about before or something." I don't know. Anyway, yeah,
Well,
but yeah.
we had that a bit with the Forgotten Palace, didn't we? Because, like I said, there are some sort of quite stressful things
With Eloise's story, yeah, I
with
did ring you a couple of
with
times. "Something you wanna
Eloise's
tell
story.
me, Al?"
Yeah, and yes, you did check in that I wasn't writing from experience, but I
Yeah.
wasn't.
No.
But going to the Forgotten Palace again as well, the other thing that I really loved that you did in that was we have that sort of third storyline going through it as well, which is a bit more mysterious. And I loved the change of pace that you did for those as well, and the voices, you kept them very neutral, because it was only when you started reading them, as writing it, I hadn't really thought about it, because I don't say any names. It's him and her and she and they. But you need to put a voice on. And so we had to be really careful what we did, so we didn't give away too much. And in my very first book, in the prologue, I did the same thing.
That's
I
right,
had a
yeah.
group of characters, but there was one particular female character who had what became quite a distinctive accent, and she was in that scene, and we ummed and ahed whether or not to give her that accent, because it gave too much away. So that's
So
the
you
other
have to
thing.
neutralize. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just have to. Again, it's writers writing the book. They're not thinking about the audio, and why should they? But for the narrator, yes, that's exactly the kind of question that you would go back to the production house or the publisher and say, could the author kindly either talk to me about it, or please get in touch and tell me what they would like for this bit, because you don't want to ruin the audio by, like you say, giving too much away or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do love listening to them. I know a lot of authors who don't like listening to their audiobooks. They don't like hearing their words.
Yeah.
And who don't read them back. But I suppose because I write in either Victorian or Tudor historical sections, I often go back to my books almost as reference points, and I use them. So I do reread them.
Yes.
But I do think the cutting off point when it made me cry with the end of the Forgotten Palace, that did feel like I was listening to somebody else's book, because like I said, I knew what was coming. I knew how it ended.
Yes.
But you did it so beautifully that I was like,
Thank you.
it
Well,
made me cry.
likewise, there are so many times when I've read your books, and particularly The Forgotten Palace, where I've turned the page and gasped and gone, My God, how does she know? I always feel with your books and, absolutely no less with The Forgotten Palace, where you suddenly took us to Crete and Knossos. I thought, "How does she do this?" How does she know all of this stuff? The way you almost like, as I said to you the other day, I think you're almost like a Dickens, the level of
Oh,
detail
thank
that
you.
you're able to no, seriously, the level of detail that you're able to bring, in Victorian London in The Music Makers, for example, or Knossos and Arthur Evans's world in The Forgotten Palace is just fabulous. It's
Uh,
fabulous.
I did for that one with Knossos, because it was a bit of a deviation for me to be writing sort of about a foreign country, and I haven't been to Crete for a while. I did do a huge amount of research, and I found it was quite surprising how much there actually was available
Mm,
about the dig.
mm,
And I
mm,
found one
mm.
book, and I bought it secondhand. I don't know if it's still in print, but it had a whole array of photographs of the dig and of
Mm,
Arthur Evans and of the
mm,
mines and of
yes,
a lot of the Cretan people who worked on the dig. And
yes,
that was really, really useful because I could actually describe it from real
yes,
photographs.
and all that information, because I myself as well, sort of another bit of how a narrator preps is I always research stuff. So I didn't come to you for the research, but I, off my own back, will always research you know, um, where something is set, what it looks like. So I too was looking at pictures of
Mm.
Knossos, pictures of Arthur Evans, because also that helps me get his voice, although staying true to the particular character you've written in The Forgotten Palace, of course. But I find that as research is so helpful for a narrator because if I can see it, then the listener can see
Yeah,
it. That's my aim. And the same aim for you as a writer. If you write it in that beautiful detail, you want to take the reader there, the listener there. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I loved with the Forgotten Palace was obviously the journey they had to get there. It's not like these days you just book a flight. And so
Mhm.
I bought a
Yes.
Bradshaw's Guide, one
Yeah.
of the books that Michael Portillo did his whole
Yeah.
series based around the old Victorian guides. And that was fascinating. The day that arrived, God, I lost hours reading that book because
Yes.
they had descriptions of the hotels,
Yes.
um, so many things, and the journeys, and they had all the stops that people took on the journeys where they would be staying overnight, the prices, and that gave me so much
Wonderful.
information, and that really made their journey then feel real, because
Yes.
I don't know I don't know about
But
Victorian
you
travel,
but you
we
brought
don't.
that so beautifully in.
Yes.
You brought that so beautifully into The Forgotten Palace. I mean, I can really feel the heat and almost taste the dust and the sand and the dig, and also really feel, oh god, the frustration that Alice starts to feel, although she still remains very ladylike, but that sort of wonderful becoming a modern woman, frustration that Alice feels in this, huge Victorian dress, and when she puts on the breeches, and people sort of going, but also finding her quite sexy in that,
Yeah.
and I love that. I love bringing in that feminism kind of suffragette kind of feel, coming into it. Really smashing detail.
It was
Just
based
wonderful.
her doing that was based on the fact that there was another archaeologist, a French archaeologist, a woman who only ever wore men's three-piece suits. And so I
Good.
thought that, yeah, good for her. I mean, why would you want to waft around in a crinoline on the dig?
Oh gosh, the heat. Yeah.
So I had her equally as moving
It's
forward
just
friend send her the breeches, so
yes,
she could waft
it's
about.
wonderful. It's astonishing because, as an actor, when I've done things like, As You Like It or Winter's Tale or something at the RSC, and or any period drama, getting into the full costume of, undergarments, corsets, my gosh. And as actors, we had to sort of really make sure we were expanding our ribs when the corset was tightened so that we've got that breath mechanism, to breathe and speak the huge language of Shakespeare on the stage. But it just is phenomenal to experience what it must have been like for women and men too, every day of their lives. I'm surprised that nobody sort of thought, I suppose it's the sort of mores and things of the time, but nobody thought to kind of get rid of this stuff earlier on. But so I really empathized with Alice and how women must have been feeling with all that stuff.
Oh, especially like you say, especially in that heat as well.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Amazing. Yeah.
Right then, should we do another question?
Okay.
Okay, before we ramble on forever.
I love talking
Okay,
to you about this.
this is for you.
Right.
When are you able to enjoy the book like a reader, or is it hard when you're focusing on the narration?
I am able to enjoy the book as a reader and a narrator at the same time, and like I say, you know, because I don't often know. You know, you tell me, for example, your work. You tell me what the book's loosely about, but I don't know page by page until I read it, and so I love simultaneously gasping and laughing and crying and all the things that you make me feel when I read your books, but at the same time, really getting excited as the actor, going, "Yeah, I'm going to enjoy bringing that off the page. I'm going to." You know, it sounds weird to say, but there's something quite juicy about playing baddies, you know. So even though they're chronically, you know, dreadful scenes of the characters, like Eloise's awful scenes, which won't give the game away. But anyway, you know, but for the actor, they're quite juicy to do, you know. So, you know, but so I can, and I get off on thinking, yeah, this is going to be a great challenge, or an accent where I go, ooh, that would be interesting to do, because I love doing accents. And I am excited to relish the words of your beautiful scenes, you know. So I am able to very much enjoy reading the book and thinking of it as a narrator at the same time. Um, and I enjoy the sort of puzzles of how to pronounce something, and ringing you up and going, "How would you like this
Yeah,
pronounced? How would you like we had with was it with the wind chime? We
yeah,
were trying to
Osith.
decide on Osith, yes, exactly, and how you would prefer things. And like I said before, I like looking at the pictures or going, "Oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing, Crete." And I remember saying to you, "Hey, Al, let's do a research trip there. We should go to Crete and do a research."
Yeah, we got a bit stymied by lockdown for that one though, didn't we?
We did. I was just checking in my notes if I had anything about that. But yes, I am very much able to. And the same for factual books as well, you know. Recently I did a narration of Pen Vogler's fantastic book called Scoff, about the history of recipes and things like, you know, tea and
Yeah.
cake, and just the most extraordinary book. And I really, when I was reading it through, I loved it as just as a reader, and I was very excited to do that. And yeah, that's a really good book. So I know we're going to talk about in a minute books we recommend, but
Books
I
were
would very
recommended,
much
yeah.
recommend that book, because it's and like you, I sort of bought old cookbooks, you know, to see, because very often they talk about, now, lady must do this at tea, or, you know, you
Yes.
must fold your napkin this way, or make the tea this way. But she goes off on, you know, the history of food in this country and around the world, and it's absolutely fascinating. So that's a very
Oh, I
good
might
one.
have to add that to my
I
catalogue of
would.
strange books.
Yes,
I
yes.
have several Tudor recipe books which I quite often use,
Right.
and I have many etiquette books, and I have
Yes,
one
I love them.
which I actually brought at Hampton Court in their gift shop years ago, and is How to Treat Servants,
Oh
and
god.
it's a copy of a Victorian book, and
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
hilarious and shocking in the
Yes,
same
yes,
breath. It
yes.
really is.
Yes,
So,
yes. Yeah,
right
so
then.
I think I've answered that question.
Yes, I think you thoroughly answered that one. Okay, the next one's mine.
Yes.
Has hearing your books as audiobooks ever changed the way you think about a character or a plot? It has and it hasn't, because obviously by the time the book gets to you, the book's written, so I can't change anything in that one. In the Marquis House books, the series, occasionally it did make me stop and think about different characters, but mostly that was already set. But the thing I do, which is probably quite naughty, because I always am hopeful that you'll be reading them, and I know that you read them, I do occasionally put lines in that I know will make you laugh.
Yeah. I love
Because
that.
I sort of want to trip you up occasionally, just so that you
Yes.
have to do a retake. So
Yes.
I do that occasionally.
Charming.
And
As if
also
my work isn't hard enough.
and also because they're sort of in jokes that
Yes.
we have too.
Yes.
But mostly I think what I've learned from the audiobooks is more pace with the dialogue, how to pace the dialogue out better, and how to sort of structure my chapters slightly, because yes, it's a book first and foremost, but I do like all my books being audiobooks, mainly because I like them, but also for personal reasons, my dad is partially sighted, so he can't read them, but he can hear them, and he loves the fact that you're the one who's
Oh,
reading.
I just
So,
loved yes, it was
so
just so moving for
that's
me.
another reason why, for me, the audiobooks are very important. And listening to you reading them, it's tightened up my writing a bit, I think, because like you say, you're performing them, and I want to make sure that these stories are vivid and that they come to life. And so occasionally, if I've got a page or a chapter where I think I've overwritten, and all writers overwrite at times, I will then read it aloud, channeling you, and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then yes, that will make me alter it. But as to the actually changing the character or a plot, I haven't really done that, because, like I said, by the time they get to you, they're done. And so I
That's
can't
right.
anyway.
No,
So, but the only bit, like I said, the only bit we did change was the bit we talked about before with the code breaking chart. We had to sort of get around that. But yeah, it just makes me, it gives it another dimension when I'm writing, because sometimes, especially if it's a tricky scene, I will play it out in my head as well and imagine how it will sound, and that often gets me past any bits if I've got a bit of a knot, or the characters are all getting a bit dull and they're all getting a bit repetitive, and I have to slash some of the copy out to make them sound more interesting. But yeah. Okay, we've got another one for you.
Okay.
Do you ever feel emotionally connected to a character that you're narrating? If yes, are you ever shocked, surprised, or delighted by the plot actions of your character? Oh, I think I made you gasp a bit with Forgotten Palace, didn't I, on this one?
Yeah, you really did. Like we've already touched on, where I rang you a couple of times and went, I need to talk about this with you.
Yeah, we need to talk about this scene.
Need to talk about you, make sure you're all right.
Yeah.
Yes, like I've already said, I love turning the page and seeing where, being caught out like anybody else, of where you or another writer might take a character, and I'm always laughing, crying, being shocked, feeling it. But what I love about you, though, as a writer, is that you walk this wonderful line between being unashamedly romantic, huge in your timeline and historical timeline, particularly massive in your detail, with the most wonderfully thought out, rounded, full dimensional characters. But you're unafraid and very bold with being unashamedly romantic and huge in what you write. So a character can have wonderful, gorgeous men or women falling into their lap, or live in a great big mansion and a castle, ride around on a jet, have masses of money in the bank, but still you keep their feet very firmly on the ground with literal human struggles. Or you make us walk this wonderful path between being very firmly in the struggles of all the things you talk about, power struggles, relationship struggles, abuse, all the human, you run the gamut of human emotions in all of your characters, which is fantastic, all of your books. But at the same time, you'll take us and them off on this enormous historical timeline, or you're not afraid to walk other planes or dimensions, or make us think about the fact that there's masses of nature that's unexplored, or the realms of possibility like myths or legends or mermaids, or and I love that. I love that duality that you have. It's just absolutely stunning, I think. So that you make us feel as human beings, but you're also speaking to our soul at the same time. And
Wow.
for me, that's really, and you'll present us with the most wonderful puzzles to work out of time and history, like your Tudor period stuff with the Marquis House books, or Victorian England in the Music Makers, or myths and legends and mermaids in Windchime, or Knossos in the Forgotten Palace. And but at the same time, you'll make us think as just everyday struggles of life, of loss, of trauma, of love, of unrequited love, of power struggles, as I say. So yeah, I'm always being touched by you as a human being, as a writer. I think you're incredible the way you do that. And I think, and because your books are so uplifting, Al, you'll take us to some really strong, massive thing and problem, but you won't necessarily work it out, because life doesn't always have a happy ending for a lot of people. But but you always give us a sense of hope and of power and of believing ultimately that human beings, like you said to me the other day, that human beings are good. And there's always a sense of journeying onwards with you, and I just love that, and also of learning from history or learning from legend or myth. So I urge everybody to buy The Forgotten Palace
Thank
and
you.
listen to it or read it, because she's an incredible writer.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think everybody should have a bit of Alexandra Walsh in their life,
Oh, thank you, Em.
if you want my opinion. And that's
That's
not just because she's one of my closest friends, and I
oh,
went to school with her.
that's
But I really do mean that, everybody, and Alex and everyone at Boldwood and everywhere. You know, this woman has the most extraordinary power as a writer, and I think she's a very important female writer in the world. And what she has to say is very important, and she's incredibly uplifting. She's a good soul, a good person.
wow. Thank you. I'm not
That's
often speechless, but I am. Thank you.
my
That's
pleasure.
amazing.
It's all real. It's true. It's true.
Wow.
So it's a great honor to do your work, because I always know that I'm gonna be put through the whole mill of stuff, of life and of living, um, but always with a sense of positivity.
Yes, it does. That I do always make sure it ends well. I always think a good ending is important. But thank you. That's unbelievable to hear that. Thank you, Em.
You're very, very welcome. My
Oh,
great pleasure.
oh well, I'm a bit overwhelmed by that.
Oh,
Because we
good.
were talking as well a bit about that on the other day when we were chatting before we did this. Because we have the scene that we're not giving away, but we have one character act quite strangely at the end of that and just walk off. And you said
Yeah,
to me you found that quite an unexpected reaction.
I did.
And when I was writing it, I hadn't really expected that that is what I would do with the character. But by the
Yeah,
time I'd finished the scene, I just thought, no, he would just walk away. He can't do anything else at that point. So that's that was quite a strange one, but we talked about that quite a
but
lot
that
when we were
again,
talking. And
with what
that's
I've
with the audio, that was even more shocking
yeah,
when that
right,
happens,
right.
because you're expecting to hear his voice again
Yes.
and you don't. He's gone.
But you know, again, that's what I'm saying with you, which also shocks and surprises me, that not because I don't think you can write it, because you can clearly, but because you again, you walk this balance between something that's sort of big and glossy and glamorous and, you know, like planes and castles and mansions and things, but at the same time, you'll surprise us with where you take people in very real emotions and situations, and I love that. I love that duality. So it's never sort of fantasy and unbelievable, because you always keep our and the book's feet firmly on the ground, rooted in, you make us understand that as humans, we don't know it all, and we have to question
Mhm.
ourselves, and like you're saying, what you think might be that character's reaction, no, you take it somewhere else and you go, "Oh, oh god, really? Oh,"
Expect
and I even rang you up and asked you about it, went, "Really? Why?" You know? And, but not ever questioning you as the writer, always respecting your decision, of course, but yeah, you do get those sort of little shocks along the way of the character going somewhere unexpectedly. Um, so I suppose in a nutshell, like I said before, there are lots of different planes and levels and things that we haven't explored about living in this universe. And I think what you make us do as human beings is just sort of quite simply accept that. And I love that about you. So things can constantly, what can seem very cozy can suddenly, like with that character's reaction, not be. And that's always the element of surprise. So it keeps the reader and the listener gripped.
Mm. And you do it brilliantly in the audios as well.
Thank you.
You
Thank you
really
very
do.
much. Thank you. I
Okay,
enjoy.
we've got a final question because we're ticking down on the time as well,
Oh, right. Oh, yes.
which is can you recommend an audiobook you recently enjoyed reading? So do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, like I said, I absolutely loved I love autobiographies, read by the authors. I loved the Springsteen one. I loved, the Elton John one, although that wasn't Elton, of course. But, I love, listening to my friends. Some wonderful friends who are terrific narrators, like Imogen Church, doing the Ruth Ware books, for example. They're terrific. Peter Noble's work, wonderful. Um, Jonathan Keeble, fantastic narrator. The books that I've loved narrating, yours, obviously, Martin Kasazian's books, I just think are absolutely sublime. He sets a lot in Victorian London, like yourself, and again, like you, his ability with detail is, and also humor and comedy and passion is just sublime. I also really love the work I've narrated of Minette Walters. I did The Swift and the Harrier for her, and again, that level of research and detail and character is just stunning. Um, and I mentioned Pen Vogler. I've enjoyed doing that one. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer. And I really enjoyed, because it reminded me of you actually and what you do and how you present characters. Narrated a book by Kathleen McGurl called The Secret of the Chateau. I really, really enjoyed that. But I've loved all the books that I've done. So anything, just listen to audiobooks. Just
Just
give it
listen
a
to
go if you've never done it before. And, yeah, but those so I love listening to stories, and I love, and particularly ones that are done by really good actors and, voice artists, and I love autobiographies. Yeah, yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm a big fan of a writer called Jodie Taylor, who writes a series called St Mary's series and another one called The Time Police. And
Mm.
all her books, except one series that she did, are narrated by a voice artist called Zara Ram. And they're all very good because she
Well,
reminds me a bit of you in that
mm,
you know the characters instantly, but the connection that she has with the books is really, I suppose she's done so many of them now, she knows the characters inside out. But
mm,
they're brilliant. I've just
great.
finished Jodie Taylor's newest book. It was one of those moments of I want to read it, but I don't want it to be over. One of those.
Yeah, I feel that about
So
yours. I feel
yeah,
that about The Forgotten Palace. Don't want it to be over. There's gotta be I
yeah,
want to know more about Alice
yeah. I
and
want to know what
Eloise. What
happens
happens to
next.
them
Yeah.
next? We need to
Well,
know, so I need
you
to
know,
write
funnily
another
enough,
one.
I was thinking about them the other day and where they could have gone next, but I'm not sure if there's a sequel in it, so we'll just sit on
We'll
that one.
see.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I also, this is a bolder book. I love Jessica Redland's books, and her most recent one is Healing Hearts at Bumblebee Barn, and that had two narrators, and
Right.
that worked really well because it was split between a female and a male character. They were the two protagonists, and so
Yes.
we switched between the two, and that was really nice. I like that. The woman was Rebecca Norfolk, and the male narrator was Gareth Bennett Ryan,
Yes,
and
I know Gareth, yeah.
oh, do you? Oh, well,
Yeah, yeah, he's great.
he was great.
Really
He
good narrator.
really warm voice, really
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
And that I loved. I loved the duality, the going between the two voices, because
Mm,
again, you get that feel. It's like, oh, we know with this person now. That worked really well. I think
yeah,
sometimes when you get books where there's a lot of narrators, it can be a bit distracting because you lose track of who's who.
sure.
But that worked brilliantly.
Mm,
And a bit like you, I quite often listen to non-fiction, and I will listen to them when I'm beginning research on new books as well.
mm.
And one that was fascinating was Antonia Fraser's Gunpowder Plot.
Oh,
That really is, because they describe it at the beginning as being like a murder mystery and
mm,
trying to work out the clues. And it's very detailed, but it's not academically detailed in that you get weighed down by endless sort of academia. It's very well written and it's very readable. It almost reads like a novel. And I've read it as well, but my first instance of it, I listened to the whole thing,
mm,
and that was really
mm,
good. That kept
mm.
me. So I thoroughly enjoyed that.
That's very
Um,
good. Oh, I also enjoyed narrating the Hardy Family series. I wasn't sure at first, by Anne Melville. So I thought, "Oh gosh, is this a bit dated?" But actually, no, it was phenomenal. Where that writer took, the characters was just wonderful, and that was Victorian England. I really like Victorian England, actually, as a narrator. I really enjoy it. Um, it's wonderful, isn't it?
that different to us,
It
yeah.
it's what's wonderful about audiobooks too, I think, is just the different time periods and different subjects. I love all the sort of romantic books as well, and modern day romantic books, and also historical fiction. Yeah, it's great. Audiobooks are great. Books are
I
great.
Books are great.
Books
Yeah.
are just knockout. We
On
love
the
them.
we do on the historical one a while ago, and again it was sort of research, and also because it had been years since I read this, I listened to The Other Boleyn Girl, the Philippa Gregory book, which was sort of the historical fiction book that exploded onto the scene and changed the genre. It stopped it being seen as just bodice ripping romances. It was taken seriously after that. And Vanessa Kirby had narrated it,
Right.
I think is a great actor as well.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. She absolutely did that superbly.
That's what I loved about the Hardy Family series, was that Anne Melville just took these, what you thought was going to be, another sort of, like you say, bodice ripping kind of thing. No, not at all. Took it somewhere completely different, and I was so bowled over by the 3 books. I thoroughly enjoyed narrating those. They were just wonderful. So there we are.
So there we go. So that's, I'm sure there are many more. I've got so many that are on my.
So we're at the 45-minute mark now. So
do we have any questions?
Is anything anybody wants to know?
Sorry, I could hear Cardi moving behind me. I've got the doggy asleep behind me.
No questions at the moment. So
no, because
as always, Al, it's been a pleasure. And
it's great. I always love talking about books and audiobooks and things with you. I really do. It's but it's just a joy. I love hearing you read my words, and I feel very, very honoured to have you.
And I love reading your words, and I feel very, very honoured. Very, absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
That's all right. We still have a few minutes, so should we just carry on chatting? Yeah, okay. I think so. Well, no one's cut us off yet, so let's just keep going.
Cut us off.
Let's just keep going until they throw us off the screen.
Yeah. No, I love it. I really love it. Books are great. I really do like biographies, though. I listened to very interesting biography, Corey Feldman's biography, because I love 80s movies. Of course, he was a big star in the 80s and things like The Goonies. Well, we were there. I love the 80s. That's our era, Al.
It was our era, yeah.
But yeah, him talking about doing The Lost Boys and all those wonderful films is really, really interesting book. Really interesting.
Was he in Stand By Me as well? He was.
He was. Yes, that's right. Yes, fantastic film. That's a beautiful.
Oh yeah, Stephen King, another amazing writer.
Amazing writer.
Wonderful. Oh look, we've got little things on the chat. Is that questions?
Where? No, because there's no questions at the moment.
No questions at the moment. Because we've talked too much.
But I think but I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions that do come through when people watch this back in their own time. If there's anything anybody wants to know.
Same here.
Very, very happy to.
So what's next? I mean, obviously, you're in the middle of a book at the moment. And
yes,
I've finished a new book.
You've nearly finished your new book. I'm recording Dostoevsky at the moment.
It's a bit of a change from mine.
Bit huge, but no, I love it. Absolutely love it. I love it. It's just phenomenal. I've been doing a lot of different sort of work recently, doing some computer game work, and all speaks to different bits of the imagination.
Certainly does.
Yeah. Did you want to say a little bit about what the new one's about, or are you going to keep it top secret?
I don't think I'm allowed to yet. I don't think
fair enough.
No, well, it's just I haven't even submitted the manuscript yet, so so probably best that I don't. I mean, I've given you a few hints so that you could get prepared. So, we can wrap things up.
Look, it says wrap it up.
We can wrap things up, so we'll do that.
We'll do that.
I just want to say a huge thank you for coming on today and doing this, for talking about
pleasure.
And for all your efforts in all my audiobooks. But The Forgotten Palace is a special one. I did put my heart and soul into that.
Yes,
and you really made that come across. So thank you.
Thank you very much, darling.
Good
Thank you
day.
for being such a brilliant writer, and thank you very much, Boldwood, for
Yes, thank
having
you.
me today.
And thank you,
And
Marcella, for organising
thank you,
this.
Marcella, and thank you, listeners.
Yeah.
And as I say, any questions, very happy to answer anything that might come through. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will talk to you soon, Em, and see you soon.
Talk to you very soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.